My name is Kevin Wise. I'm a professor in the Department of Advertising here in the College of Media, and I am one of 4 faculty co-directors of the MAD Lab, the Media and Advertising Lab, also in the College of Media. In any given year, we have somewhere between 10 or 15 students that are involved in the lab. And in our lab space, we have equipment set up to measure eye tracking, for example. That's one thing that a lot of people are doing right now, is doing studies that involve eye tracking, looking at how different features of various media interfaces affect kind of visual attention, how long you're looking at something, where you're looking at something, kind of the ongoing cognitive processing that is going on. So we have the capability to do that. We also have another platform where we can get other psychophysiological measures, or biometrics is kind of how they're being called now. It's a little bit of an easier term to handle. But for example, we're equipped to measure 3 other interesting measures: heart rate, which is simply heart rate, right? The rate at which your heart is beating. Skin conductance, which is just a fancy way of saying how much you're perspiring, and then facial EMG, which is just looking at the underlying electrical activation that facilitates things like smiling and frowning and other sort of overt physical responses. What we're essentially measuring is the electrical potentials that underlie those movements, those actions. And I can talk a little bit about some of the studies that are ongoing. A couple of the students that I'm advising right now, I've got one student in particular that's working on a dissertation, and she's particularly interested in basically AI newscasters. And so, well, there are broadcast journalism entities in Asia that are using essentially avatars, right, that are completely artificially constructed. It's something that looks uncannily human, but it's also it's a computer generated person. How does that distinction between a human and an artificial newscaster influence things like how much attention we're paying to the news? To what extent is the emotional impact of the news? If we're describing unpleasant stories, which tends to be what happens in the news, is the same story perceived as being more or less unpleasant as a function of whether the newscaster is a human or an artificial agent? Perception of newscaster credibility, which of course is a huge topic in lots of other ways today. I've got another student, a doctoral student, and the platform she's interested in is more of an interactive advertising platform. There will be certain brands that are experiencing with this ad choice format, in which rather than just getting a traditional ad that you or I are familiar with, you'll get a little screen that says, okay, here are 3 possible ads, pick which one you want. But this idea is really quite interesting in the sense that you've got a commercial, which is traditionally a nuisance, right? Unless we're watching the Super Bowl, that's pretty much the only context in which we actually want to see the commercials. Other than that, they're usually a distraction, keeping us from our primary media goal, which is watching a movie or a game show or whatever. And so the idea is that, okay, if you give people some sense of control over what it is they're seeing, even if it's something that we know they don't want to see, right? We know it's a nuisance, but if you say, okay, now you can choose which nuisance you get, 1, 2, or 3, does that make a difference, right? Does that make a difference in terms of people's general attitudes towards advertising as a whole? Do they find the particular ad or the brand more compelling? And so just in the way that, people for decades have been studying just the effects of a particular advertisement or a campaign, what we're interested in is not so much the specific ad or the campaign, but how much this affordance of choice, influences that outcome. And a lot of what we do is taking, applying theories, methods, approaches, perspectives from research being done in psychology, and kind of focusing that on, how people's psychological interactions with media unfold. And so I guess when we're talking about media psychology, we're focusing on specifically, cognition, emotion, and behavior. So how do our interactions with media unfold in ways that affect how we think, how we feel, how we act in a lot of different contexts?